stars were supposed to be silent. That's what the scientists had always said, hadn't they? Vast, endless silence, a vacuum of nothingness, stretching out forever. But when the skies over Earth lit up like a fireworks display on New Year's Eve, humanity learned something very different. The stars weren't silent. They were watching, and now they'd come knocking. It started with a ripple in the sky, an aurora that didn't belong. Shades of green and blue twisted unnaturally like oil spilled across water. Then came the sound. Not thunder, not lightning, but a low hum that rattled bones and made teeth ache. By the time the first ships broke through the atmosphere, the world was already holding its breath. They called themselves the Zorathian Dominion. Their language was sharp, guttural, and filled with clicks that no human tongue could replicate, but their message, that came through loud and clear: surrender, obey, assimilate. They didn't want our resources or our land. No, they wanted something far more valuable: us, humanity itself, our ingenuity, our adaptability, our knack for survival against impossible odds. To them, we were raw material, a species ripe for exploitation. The leaders of Earth gathered quickly, as you'd expect. Presidents, prime ministers, generals, tech moguls, they all crammed into underground bunkers and video conferences, arguing over how to respond. Should we fight? Negotiate? Beg? The Zorathians had parked their fleet in orbit, a menacing armada of black, angular ships, bristling with weapons that defied comprehension. Every satellite feed showed the same thing. Earth reflected back in the cold, unblinking eyes of alien war machines. But amidst the chaos, one voice rose above the rest. Dr. Elena Carter, a physicist from Chicago with a penchant for thinking outside the box. She wasn't a politician or a soldier, just a scientist who refused to believe humanity was as helpless as it seemed. Look, she said, during one particularly heated meeting, her voice cutting through the noise like a scalpel. We're not going to outgun them, that much is obvious. But if there's one thing humans excel at, it's using what we've got in ways no one expects. What are you suggesting? Asked General Hawthorne, a grizzled veteran with a face like cracked leather. Elena leaned forward, her dark eyes gleaming with something between desperation and determination. I'm suggesting we don't fight them on their terms. We fight them on ours. And so the plan was born. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't even particularly sane, but it was pure, undiluted humanity, a mix of audacity, creativity, and just enough recklessness to make it work. The Zorathians had underestimated us. They saw a species still fumbling with space travel, still divided by borders and ideologies. What they didn't see was our resourcefulness, our ability to turn the mundane into the extraordinary. While they flaunted their advanced technology, we turned to something they couldn't have anticipated: the internet. It sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? Facing down an interstellar empire with memes and Wi-Fi routers. But here's the thing. The Zorathians relied on their own version of a network, a vast, interconnected system that controlled everything from their weapons to their navigation. And thanks to some clever reverse engineering by Elena and her team, we found a way in. The operation was codenamed Pandora's Key. It involved repurposing every piece of tech we could get our hands on: smartphones, gaming consoles, even old fax machines. Anything that could transmit a signal became part of the plan. Hackers from around the globe worked tirelessly, breaking down firewalls and writing code that would make even the most seasoned programmer weep. It wasn't just about disrupting the Zorathian systems, it was about overwhelming them, drowning them in the sheer chaos of human ingenuity. When the day finally came, the world held its breath. The Zorathians had issued an ultimatum: surrender within 24 hours or face annihilation. Their ships loomed overhead, casting long shadows over cities and countryside alike. People gathered in streets and parks, staring up at the sky as if waiting for the end. But then something remarkable happened. It started small, a flicker of light on one of the alien ships. Then another and another. Within minutes, the entire fleet was awash in a kaleidoscope of colors, their sleek black hulls now covered in dancing images of cats, cartoons, and poorly drawn stick figures. The Zorathians' communication channels erupted in confusion as their systems were flooded with data, endless streams of videos, music, and memes. Rick Astley's "Never Gonna Give You Up" played on repeat, echoing through their corridors like some bizarre battle anthem. The aliens tried to fight back, of course. They deployed countermeasures, attempted to isolate their systems, but it was no use. For every firewall they erected, humanity found 10 ways around it. For every system they shut down, we brought 2 more online. It wasn't just a hack, it was a cultural assault. We threw everything at them: Shakespearean sonnets, cooking tutorials, conspiracy theories, even footage of politicians arguing over parking regulations. It was information overload on a scale they couldn't have possibly
And then came the final
prepared
blow.
for. Somewhere in the chaos, someone, no one knows exactly who, uploaded a virus disguised as a harmless file. Its name, readme.exe. When the Zorathians opened it, their entire network collapsed like a house of cards. Ships lost power, weapons went offline, and navigation systems spiraled into madness. The once mighty fleet now drifted aimlessly, powerless and vulnerable. On the ground, people erupted into cheers. Strangers hugged each other in the streets. News anchors struggled to contain their emotions as they reported the unbelievable victory. Against all odds, humanity had done the impossible. We hadn't just survived, we'd won. In the aftermath, the Zorathians sent a single transmission. It was brief, almost begrudging. "You are formidable," it said. "We will not return." And just like that, they were gone. Their ships vanished into the void, leaving behind only the faintest traces of their presence. Earth was safe, at least for now. As the celebrations died down and life began to return to normal, Dr. Elena Carter stood on the roof of her lab, staring up at the night sky. She knew this wasn't the end. The universe was vast, and the Zorathians were just one of countless civilizations out there. But for the first time, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Because if there was one thing this whole ordeal had proven, it was that humanity was capable of incredible things. We weren't the strongest or the smartest species in the galaxy, but we were something far more dangerous. We were unpredictable, and sometimes that's all it takes to change the game. The days that followed the Zorathians' retreat were surreal. Humanity had faced extinction and emerged victorious, not through brute force or advanced weaponry, but through sheer creativity and defiance. The world was still buzzing with the aftershocks of what had happened. News outlets replayed footage of the alien ships lit up with dancing memes and cascading error messages, while social media exploded with hashtags like humanity FTW and never gonna give you up to aliens. But beneath the surface of celebration, there was an undercurrent of unease. People knew this wasn't over. Earth had just announced its presence to the galaxy in the loudest, most chaotic way possible. And while the Zorathians might have been scared off for now, who knew what other civilizations were out there watching, waiting? Elena Carter felt it too. She couldn't shake the nagging thought that humanity's victory had painted a target on its back. As she stood in her lab, surrounded by the remnants of the tech they'd used to pull off the greatest hack in history, she found herself wondering what happens when the next fleet arrives, when the next enemy isn't as easily fooled. That's when the knock came at her door. It was late, well past midnight, and the rest of the building was empty. Elena hesitated for a moment before opening it, half expecting a reporter or maybe one of the government officials who'd been pestering her for interviews. Instead, she found herself face to face with a man she didn't recognize. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in a black suit that screamed government agent. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes carried the weight of someone who'd seen too much. "Dr. Carter," he said, his voice low and steady, "we need to talk." The man introduced himself as Agent Keller, though Elena doubted that was his real name. He wasted no time getting to the point. "You've done something extraordinary," he said, pacing the room as he spoke. "Something no one thought was possible, but you've also drawn attention to us, attention we're not ready for." Elena crossed her arms, leaning against her desk. "I'm aware of the risks, Agent Keller, but what was I supposed to do? Let them take us without a fight?" "No," Keller admitted. "What you did was necessary, brilliant even, but now we need to prepare for what comes next." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device, a sleek, metallic cube that seemed to hum faintly in his hand. He placed it on the desk between them, and with a soft chime, it projected a holographic image into the air. It was a star map filled with countless points of light, but what caught Elena's attention were the red markers scattered throughout. "These," Keller said, gesturing to the red points, "are known hostile civilizations. The Zorathians are just one of many. And thanks to your little stunt, they're all going to know about us soon enough." Elena stared at the map, her stomach sinking. "How do you know this?" Keller gave her a thin smile. "Let's just say the Zorathians weren't the first visitors we've had. They were just the first to make their intentions so explicit." Her mind raced. If what he was saying was true, then Earth wasn't just facing a single threat. It was standing on the edge of a galactic battlefield, and humanity was woefully unprepared. "What do you want from me?" she asked finally. Keller leaned forward, his gaze intense. "We want you to help us level the playing field. You've already proven that human ingenuity can outmatch even the most advanced technology. Now, we need to take it further. We need to build something that will make anyone think twice before coming after us again." Elena frowned. "You're talking about weapons." "I'm talking about survival," Keller countered. "Call it whatever you want, but the fact is, we can't rely on luck and clever hacks forever. We need defenses, offenses, something that says, if you come for us, you won't leave in one piece." She wanted to argue, to push back against the idea of turning Earth into a fortress, but deep down, she knew he was right. The Zorathians wouldn't be the last, and if humanity wanted to survive, it couldn't afford to be caught off guard again. "All right," she said after a long pause, "I'll help, but on one condition." Keller raised an eyebrow. "And that is?" "This isn't just about building bigger guns," Eleanor said firmly. "If we're going to do this, we need to think smarter, find ways to use what we already have, our creativity, our unpredictability. That's what makes us dangerous, not brute force." Keller considered her words for a moment before nodding. "Agreed." Over the next few months, Elena found herself thrust into a world she never could have imagined. She was given access to resources she hadn't even known existed, classified technologies, alien artifacts recovered from previous encounters, and a team of some of the brightest minds on the planet. Together they worked tirelessly, developing systems and strategies that blended human ingenuity with stolen alien tech. One of their first breakthroughs was a new kind of drone, small, fast, and equipped with adaptive AI that could learn and evolve in real time. Unlike traditional weapons, these drones didn't rely on brute strength. Instead, they used deception and misdirection, creating illusions and false signals to confuse and disorient their targets. In simulations, they proved devastatingly effective, taking down entire fleets without firing a single shot. But it wasn't just about weapons. Elena insisted on focusing just as much on defense, ways to protect Earth without turning it into a militarized wasteland. They developed cloaking systems that could hide entire cities from view, shields capable of deflecting energy blasts, and even methods of hacking into alien networks before they could hack into ours. As the months turned into years, humanity transformed. The scars of the Zorathian invasion began to fade, replaced by a newfound sense of purpose. Nations that had once been at odds with each other now worked together, united by the shared goal of survival. It wasn't always easy. Old habits died hard, and there were plenty of arguments along the way. But for the first time in history, humanity truly felt like a single species. And then one day, the signal came. It was faint at first, barely detectable amidst the background noise of space. But as it grew stronger, it became clear that it wasn't random. It was a message, a warning. "They're coming," Keller said grimly as he and Elena stared at the decoded transmission. "And they're not alone." The Zorathians hadn't forgotten about Earth, and this time, they weren't coming alone. They'd formed an alliance with several other hostile civilizations, pooling their resources to ensure that humanity wouldn't stand a chance. But as Elena looked out at the night sky, she didn't feel fear, she felt resolve. Because she knew something the Zorathians didn't. Humanity wasn't the same species they'd tried to conquer years ago. We'd grown, adapted, evolved, and if they thought they could take us down, they were in for a rude awakening. The stars weren't silent anymore, and neither were we.